Hey guys, I lied to you. And I'm here to confess my sins that I did lie to you. But this will be the final video, video 8, because there's been a substantive change in the condition. And I want to make it clear, I had zero intention on doing another video. In this case, 8. Maybe it's better 7.1. But I had no intention on doing another video. So this is not all for the dramatic or anything like that. This is real shit that's going on that just happened today where we're able to make some progress. I just want to make that clear. Video 7 and this one are not up for making clicks. I'm just trying to inform you guys what happened. So I just want to make sure you understood that. And it's a change to the positive. We'll get to that here in a second. I want to go over the genesis of what's going on and how I kind of come to this point this morning. When I had the carbs off to do some things that you guys actually recommended me to do. So let me go over that first. I was thinking about this last night after a viewer suggested I take the emulsion, check the emulsion tubes to make sure the little holes in them weren't plugged. And I thought about it and said, you know, I never took those out because for some reason I had it drilled in my petrified brain, which is pretty hard. I mean, it's not easy to drill into. That these were pressed in emulsion tubes. They are not pressed in emulsion tubes. I can show you the parts fish that proves it, but you don't need to see that. They're not pressed in, they come out. And I went, holy crap. So this morning when I got up, I took the carbs out. First thing I did, put them on Dad's old bench. And I took, the float bowls and the tops of the carbs off and the slides out so I could push those emulsions out. They came right out. Checked them, and don't get your hopes up or anything because there was nothing wrong with them. They were perfectly clean. Put them right back in, put the main jet back in, put the slides back in, and then I decided to, before I put the float bowls on, I thought I'd make a slow jet change and essentially make a larger slow jet. All right? So let me freehand the camera here and we'll kind of go into that because I got to go over and show you what a jet looks like and what I did. Okay, so like I said, I had the float bowls off, the carbs turned upside down, and I had already put the mains in. There's those little plugs in the bottom of the holes where the slow jet goes because they get fed through the main jet through a little port. Took the plugs out, unscrewed the main jets. This is what the main jets look like. This is Dad's old parts drawer that I use specifically for carb stuff. And these are what these look like if I can get my bare paws on them. They're these little tiny jobs. I don't remember the number, like the style number of these jets, but this is what they look like, as opposed to one of these guys or a similar Makini pilot jet. Okay. So anyway, I took these out and I found. Now remember, the stock jet size, it plays a key role here. Now we'll show you that on the fish because it's important. The stock jet size pilot is 37.5, which I have seen 100 times because I've been in this fish 100 times. And when I first took these slow jets out of the carbs to clean them, to check them, I first got this bike in as a customer job. I took these slow jets out and read them and said, yeah, those are the right ones. And then in my brain I said, well, I know they're the right jets, so I don't have to worry about that. Except this is one of the jets that I took out this morning because I took 4 37.5 old jets just like this that were up in this bin, and I did my trick on reaming them out 2 steps because I figured I want to go richer on the slow jets, and I'll explain why here in a second. So I use my pin set and I measure a 37.5 and then go 2 steps, which is basically 2 thou bigger. I think the 37.5s were like a 13 thou and I went to 15. Use my jet reamer set, this is it right here, and a little pin vise, and then ream the jet out until the 15 thou gauge pin goes right in. And again, these are the ones that came out. So then I put those carbs back on, and I also worked on the exhaust, but we'll get to that here in a second as far as cleaning the inside of it. Yeah, you're gonna love that. But I took a look at these jets just a little while ago, and I want to show you the number on these. And remember, this is one of the jets that I took out that was in the carbs before. You see that number? That's not 37.5. That's 32.5. And I don't know how, I don't think I missed it. I don't know how I didn't recognize that. I must have looked at it the first time and thought it said 37.5, or in my brain I thought 32.5 was the stock size. Maybe I misread it on the parts fish. I don't know, maybe I looked it up in the book. I don't know what it was, but I usually go off the parts fish. So the parts fish says it's 37.5. These are 32.5s. That's what was in there. So there's your problem, lady. There's your problem, lady. The jets are way too lean, size-wise. No wonder the damn thing was running the way it was. So now I'm going to get to the reason why I opened these things up. Because remember, I'm still under the impression that we have 37.5 jets in this thing. Because I hadn't read that jet again. I had done this work that I'm about to tell you, then I took a look at the jets. And now everything's like, oh my God. Had a doy moment, you know? All right. So you remember, I don't know if you saw earlier in a Z1R video, I had the same exact scenario where I could not get the carb tune to read on those mechanical round slides at all, at idle, and nothing. That's a built-up motor, moderately built up, all right? And the engine builder I emailed the engine builder and said, hey, I can't get enough vacuum impulse to get this thing to read on a carb tune. He said, richen up the slow jet, it'll start reading. And in my case, I went one step. I think I had 17.5, which is way too lean for that, but I had to start somewhere. And I went to 20, then to 22, and ultimately it's got 25s in it now, but that's another matter. That's through testing, you know. Anyway, once I put 20s in it, or maybe it was 22.5, I don't remember, I started getting readings on the carb tune, and I was able to sync those carbs in the Z1R. And I hadn't thought about that until last night. Again, after reading some of you guys' comments, because your comments have been really helpful. It's another thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll get to the comments here in a minute. So I took those, again, I richened up the 37.5, which I thought was in there before, 2 steps. So I measured it out. It was like 13 thou for gauge pin, and then, like I think I already said that before, I went to 15 thou. Stuck those in, so they should be a 42.5. Put the carbs on the bike, and then I put the exhaust back on. The reason why I peeled the exhaust off was because, you noticed in the other video, I did air test it with the vacuum shop vac, but I wanted to try cleaning it. And so I took the exhaust back off, and I had to take the pressure washer out to work on, I had to pressure wash my trailer because I'm taking it on a trip. I also did the shed. The Fat Ninja here and the VFR are going on a trip out of state. I'm on a trailer, I'm out of state to ride up in Tennessee. So that thing looked like it was parked in a swamp because it's Florida, and it was. So I needed to clean all the crap off it, including the roof. But while I had the pressure washer out, I just peeled these off, brought them outside, squirted a bunch of Simple Green in them, and I blew these out with the pressure washer. Now you can't get too far in, but I knew these were not like the, what do you call them, not the padding, the packing, that's it, the packing style baffles, because they're welded shut, there's no way to service them. So I figured they must be some sort of chamber baffle, which apparently they are, because they don't feel like they got a wet towel in them now when I got all the water drained out, so I knew the water was out, we were good. And so I did both sides of the exhaust with the Simple Green and the pressure washer, and unfortunately I did not get any chunks out or anything significant coming out of them. I watched the soapy water very carefully, and there was absolutely nothing significant. So I can honestly say for sure that there was no blockage in these. So I did my hairdryer trick that I use on fuel tanks when I derust them, and I set that up, and that's actually when I did my pressure washing to kill time while they dried. And I shot those back on. The carbs were already back on. Then I fired it up. And I got a bunch of black smoke out of here. Not blue smoke, black smoke, like she's running rich. And I said, well, that's odd. I only went up 2 steps from what was in there before. Then that's when I went over and took a look at the jets that I had taken out and said, holy shit. And I said, you idiot, you complete dumbass. How could you make such a boneheaded amateur mistake? So anyway, it runs pretty good. I'll let you in on that right now. So let's go ahead and, end the suspense. You know how they say, keep an idiot in suspense. Don't tell them. But I'm going to tell you guys because you're far from idiots. You guys have helped me out a lot. So stand by. Let me turn the fuel on. And prepare to be amazed. Because I was amazed. Amazing grace. Ready? Contact. Whoops. Look at that. I gotta do a little tweaking on it. But this is the best part. This is not the best part. It's running a little rich. You think? Exhaust pulses are definitely even, but I don't have a strong exhaust pulse on both sides as I did yesterday, which is kind of weird. I think maybe because it's running properly. What's that idle look like? Might need to come up a little bit. That's better. That's better. It's probably why I didn't want to start at idle. I needed idle up a little bit more. Yeah, that's a lot better. .22 inches of, centimeters of mercury. Pretty good strong impulse now considering we had none before. All right, you got the idea. I don't have the fan on right now because I'm trying to keep, the noise down. I'm going to go ahead and shut the fuel off, and we'll close this out here momentarily. But yeah, so it runs pretty good now. Like I said, I think it needs a little more tweaking, perhaps on the slow screw side as well. But I think it's a little rich because I'll tell you right now, especially on these CV carbs, you definitely do get some influence from the slow circuit all the way through the throttle range. You really do. It's not as great at higher throttle, but if you're dragging air through and air is coming in through the slow air jet on the back and you're dragging air through, you're going to get a little influence. Just like at idle, you're going to get a slight amount of influence from the main circuit as well. Very, very small. I've been able to change lean low speed running by just bumping up the main jet, and that straightened out both the low speed and a higher speed running stuff that I was dealing with in a particular carb. So it's not like you'll read that quarter throttle is where the slow circuit essentially shuts off, and it's not like somebody turns a switch off and there's like a little guy that lives in there going click. There's still a certain amount of influence, so I think that's why we're getting some black smoke out of it, and that's because of my dumb-assed problem with not being able to read numbers. I guess I need to figure out if I got dyslexia or something. I don't know. But I don't know. For some reason, I had it in my head that the 132.5 was the stock jet size when it's 137.5. That's why I never went into the stock jets before today. And I could have saved myself a lot of hassle and a lot of frustration by just double checking it, which I did, of course, today, in a roundabout way. And yeah, so, okay, so the question comes to mind, how come just by putting a larger slow jet, we get good vacuum or good intake pulses registering on the carb tune where we didn't before with a smaller slow jet? The bike was running, but not running well, and it was dropping a cylinder, yes. But wouldn't it, you know, essentially measure that intake pulse because the engine is turning and each cylinder is generating an intake pulse? And I honestly don't know the technical answer to that, but I do have a theory. And the engine builder kind of alluded to it indirectly when he told me to go from what I was in, 17.5, I think, on the Z1R up to 20. And it was kind of indirect, like I said, or implied, where he was thinking it was running too lean, so therefore it was at an inefficient combustion cycle at idle. So if you think about that, and this one was a really poster child for that. If you think about it, let's look at the firing order. In this particular case, and a lot of these inline fours are the same, it's 1, 2, 4, 3. So if cylinder number 1 is firing, cylinder number 2 is on the intake stroke because it's coming up on the power stroke to fire. And so what's going to end up happening is when you have combustion that's efficient, you have a significantly better acceleration of the piston downwards, because if it's running inefficiently, it has less power. We need more power. And this, with less power, it's not going to be pumping that piston down very fast. And therefore, you're not going to have that inertia. And in idle, you don't have a whole lot of inertia from RPM anyway. And then when she comes around an intake stroke, because it's at the power stroke has been exhausted or been completed on cylinder previous, it's going to pull a nice fast charge. So in other words, it's you got to look at a motor with the idea of it not being necessarily, at an idle I mean, not being necessarily a linear, regular turning of the rotation of the crank. It's more like this, an idle, okay? Because of power, 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 power. So that's really what happens on any internal combustion engine, unless you had a huge flywheel on them for some reason, which smooths them out, which I think that's one of the reasons why you have such large harmonic balancers on automobiles or the old V8s and so forth, for that very reason, to kind of dampen that. And we do have a flywheel technically sort of on the other side, which is the stator, but that's the rotor rather, but it's not that much. So again, you have to think of it this way, all right? So when it's coming down on a power stroke and it's running correctly, the power stroke's going to be much quicker and much harder than if it's not running correctly. And I believe that is the reason why we are now getting intake impulses on the carb tune where we were not before. And I should have realized that, because I just didn't think about the situation with the Z1R and what the engine builder had told me, which did turn out to be correct on that. When I upped the jets, I started getting a reading like I am now. I just didn't think about it at that time when pertaining to this situation. Last night I did, and that ties into the other stuff that I've already told you. I think she's just about done, and like I said, this will probably be the last repair video. So yeah. Again, I think there may be another shorter video coming up when I'm going to take it out for a test ride. I'll try to bring you guys with me. You may enjoy that, and we'll run it around the block illegally, and see how it tracks and how it runs and under acceleration and so forth. But then we got this part licked actually, and I tell you what, I do not know what happened. I just don't. Too much going on, I don't know. But I thought in my head that 132.5 apparently was the proper jet size. That's why when I read it in those carb jets that I showed you before, the ones that were in there before, earlier, originally, I thought they were the right jets. Obviously not. And if I had been able to recognize that, I would have been able to avoid all this hassle. But I'm kind of glad I did all that stuff, because I never really changed out the throttle shafts. Seals, that is. I've taken the throttle shafts out because they were stuck, gummed up. So it was fun putting the seals in, and it was fun doing the, the work on the choke or the enricher plungers. And I can't remember if I mentioned it before. The reason why I had those out as well this morning was, I did mention it before about the emulsion tubes. Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been breathing exhaust in here now. I can't think. But I will put the gentleman's name, the viewer's name, right about here who said about the emulsion tube stuff, because he brought up a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. But as I said, they weren't the problem anyway. But think about it this way. If I hadn't gone in there to check the emulsion tubes, then I probably would not have gone, I probably would not have gone in there otherwise, to change the slow jets. I did it only because I was in there anyway, doing the emulsion tubes, and I said, ah, shit, I'll screw with the slow jets as long as I'm in here. If I hadn't seen that comment, or he hadn't commented, and I hadn't said, that's a really good point, because I thought they were pressed in when they're not, I wouldn't have gone in the carbs at all. This thing would still be sitting here with me scratching my head going, I don't understand why it doesn't run right. So, yeah. I don't even know anybody's watching this channel anymore. I really don't. I know I don't know. I think I might just go to seminary or something and go preach to, I don't know. I couldn't do that. I cuss too much. Go hide somewhere on a deserted island. I don't know. Dumb. It was just ridiculous. But I told you guys once, if I told you 100 times, I don't hide from my mistakes. So I'm going to tell you when I make a mistake. This one was a doozy, but fixed it in the end. Thanks for watching. Catch you on another video.